I moved in with my sister in 2015. She's my little sister. She lived alone at the time in a 4-bedroom house. So my 2 kids and I moved in to help just keep an eye out on the house. So she's out of town for work almost the whole year. Like, she would show up maybe like for a weekend and then she'd have to fly back out for work. So we would see her just like randomly, but she would always call to let me know just in case she needed like a ride from the airport or anything for me to get for her. But most of the time it was just my 2 kids and I. And they're both little at the time too. My daughter, I think, is like 4, so my son would be 8. So they were both small. So there was like this, like in the hallway, we would always have the light on just in case the kids needed to get up and get some water or anything. And a lot of the times I would see just little, like a shadow, like when people walk by and you can see it. But I know my kids like steps and how they move. So it was too heavy of a shadow for it to be any of them because they were little. I just said, okay, maybe it is them. Just, it's the middle of the night, whatever. Went back to sleep. But eventually I had to turn those lights off because they were getting scared. They were thinking that it was me walking around or something. So I just didn't think much of it. I was just like, okay, we'll just not have these on and whatever. It'll just go away. We're just scared. It's a new place. It's a little spread out. So the house, it's pretty big. So you walk in and you have a little foyer area, and to the right you have the formal living room / like dining room that you would have to like step 2 steps up to get to the dining room. If you go through a little door that's in the dining room, you hit like the kitchen and a little like breakfast nook or whatever area, and then you keep making a left, and then it's like the big family room, and then there's like a hallway off of that just goes into all of the rooms. There's 4 rooms in there. My sister's being the master, and then the other 3, which is me and my 2 kids, were more like to the left, tucked in. It was late. I'm gonna say it was well over maybe like 12, because the kids had a bedtime at 9, lights out, everything's asleep, they're asleep. And then I'd usually turn my TV off around like 10:30 or something. And I know it was well after that. I was asleep for a couple hours, so it had to have been well after midnight. And I don't know what woke me up, but I thought I had, you know, when you can hear, I don't know if it's just me, but you can hear a movement coming or you can feel a movement coming. So I felt like somebody was coming, or either, I don't know, reaching the door or something, but I woke up and that's when I looked under the door and I saw somebody just walk towards the kids' room. My room was the first one, and then there's 2 was like behind mine. So I thought it was one of them, but the more I thought about it, I was like, no, that was a bit too heavy, like to be one of them. They usually hurry down the hallway because it's dark, so they're scared. And that wasn't like that. But I just thought, okay, maybe it is one of them still. Like, I'm just overthinking it, and I just went back to sleep. It was the first time that I had seen something like that. So I was like, no, I'm tripping. There's no way. This was maybe like 4 months in. It wasn't too long, but she just had roommates before me, and they would also say little random things like that. But I'm like, okay, well, it's an old house and you guys are just, because she doesn't like hearing it. She gets mad when we tell her that there's things there or something's happening. So I thought that they were just playing with her, like trying to like just poke at her. I didn't think it was real. That same hallway has a little closet door, like a coat closet. and that would randomly just open. We never used it. We live in Arizona, so coats aren't really a thing out here. So it was more for like storage. I would like the Christmas tree there, like just blankets, things like that. And the door would randomly be open, but sometimes the kids would play hide and seek. So I'm like, okay, they're playing in there. But I would always open the door anyways to sweep in there if I'm cleaning or anything. And there was this one time where it shut, like I was sweeping and I hadn't even gotten to there yet, and the door just shut. So I thought my daughter maybe is playing or they're in the middle of a game or something. So I go to open it so I don't know, okay, I'm gonna sweep in here, and she's not there. So I'm like, okay, maybe she just closed it then. She closed it and left. So that's what I thought in my head. So I opened it and I slept in there or whatever. And then I go to the living room and she's sitting there and she's watching TV, and I'm like, hey, like, I'm sweeping, make sure you don't go in the closet again, because like we're mopping next. She was like, I wasn't even in the closet today. My son wasn't out there, so I know he wasn't playing with her at the time. So I'm like, okay, maybe because we have the door open and the wind somehow traveled into the hallway and closed the door. I don't know. Anything to like not believe. So when I went back to do the mopping part of it, I opened the closet and I saw some markings on the door that I'd not seen before, and that closet's pretty active. But they were like when you measure yourself and you put a little date next to it and everything and growing. But it was from like the 70s. The dates on there were like 1972, 73, 74, and it was like that. And after 82, it just stopped. So I'm like, okay, that's weird because I'd never seen that there before. The closet's always opening and closing. I would have seen that if I saw it right now. So that kind of creeped me out. I asked my daughter if she was writing on the wall or sun or anything, but they've never been those kind of kids, so they were like, no, we didn't do that. So I just cleaned it off. I remember like having to erase it instead because it was just pencil. And I just left it at that. I was like, well, maybe I just never seen it before and never paid attention, which was weird because I was cleaning like around the doorknobs, so I would have seen it, but I don't know. Maybe I missed it in my head. So my sister's room connected to that closet in the back end of it, but she was never home, so the room's always empty. I would just go in there if I'm like cutting through to go to the backyard because she had a little area back there, but she was never home. So just randomly, the kids would go to like their dad's house for the weekend, so I'd be alone for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there was this one weekend where I came home from work and her TV was on, and I thought maybe she got there and like she forgot to tell me or something. So I go in there to say hi to her and everything's normal, just the TV's like on. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. I just turn it off. I leave. And I was in my head, I'm like, maybe she had it like on a sleep timer or like an alarm, which is weird because it would have gone off before, but I always just try to make excuses. That same night, her shower turned on. It was later on in the night. It was maybe like 8 already. I was like getting ready, just cleaning the kitchen, getting ready for bed. And I thought it was, at first I thought it was like I left the water hose on outside. I just heard like water going, and it wasn't that. So I checked the washer. It wasn't that. And I get closer to the hallway area and I hear it coming from her room. So I get freaked out at that time because the incident of the TV had already happened. And I called my friend and I was telling her like what was going on, and she's just go through the back. Don't go through the room, go through the back. Maybe it's safer. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I go to the backyard, go through the little back area to get to her bathroom. And it's off. but it was on because everything inside was wet. So I just freaked out and I left that night. I went to go spend the night at my friend's house and I was like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, no, it's just, you're under a lot of stress and like the kids aren't there. You probably missed them. She was just trying to calm me down, but I know that it was wet and there's no it was on. That was scary. Like somebody had taken a shower, like the walls were wet, the curtain was wet, the floor was wet. So I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe nobody was there, it was just me. Not even the kids were there. They were off with their dad that weekend. So it was just me, and that's why I freaked out, and I was like, no, I'm leaving. I'm not staying here tonight. And I called to tell my sister, but she doesn't like hearing it. So she was like, no, you're lying, whatever. Which I understand. It's her house, and she's the only one that lives there. So of course she probably doesn't want to hear about things like that. So later on, it was around Christmas time. She wasn't home for Christmas, but I had still did all the decorations because the kids were super into it. So we put up like 2 trees in both living rooms. Maybe like halfway through the month of December or something, we started hearing like the ornaments fall, but it was a real Christmas tree. So I was like, okay, maybe it's like drying up already, like we need to water it or something. So that was like, I didn't think much of it, but there was this one time where I was getting ready to leave in the morning for work, and I was getting the kids ready for school, and we passed by one of the living rooms, and there's a line of ornaments, like on the floor. They're in the perfect line, and it's all tile flooring, so it's hard for an ornament to just stay still so perfectly. There was like 6 of them in a line. I look at the kids, and it's just me and them. We have no pets. We have nothing, just us. So they just don't think anything of it. They pick it up, put it back on, and in my head I'm like, no, that's weird. We leave for the day. I used to work really close to my sister's house, maybe like a 5-minute drive. So I used to go home for lunch sometimes. And that day I decided to go home, and they were there again. There was just a straight line, 6 ornaments. And I just picked them up, put them all up, and that was the first living room. When you walk in, that's the first thing I saw, because it was the first formal living room. So I kept going straight to go to like the kitchen. All of the cupboards and all of the drawers are open. All of the drawers, the cabinets, the pantry, everything is just open. And it almost looks like some of the drawers are like rummaged through. So I was like, oh my gosh, did somebody break in? Did we get robbed? But everything was still there. The door was locked. The back door was locked. All the windows were closed. So I was like, okay, whatever. I closed everything again. And I just left. I didn't even end up having lunch. I was like, I'm not staying here. I left. I went back to work. When we got out of work, I went and got the kids from their after school program or whatever. Came home, and again, all of the things were open. There was no more ornaments, but all of the things were open again. So the kids looked at me freaked out, and I was like, no, it was just me. Like, I was looking for something earlier. I don't want them to be scared of where they sleep, because I don't want them to have that stress or whatever. I told them it was just me, everything was fine. So I was making dinner, and in the kitchen, like I said, when you look straight, you can see a little bit of the living room, and then it's like the little breakfast nook, and the dining room area is tucked into this little room, but you can see in there too, just not too much. It's like a little corner. And my son and my daughter always like to play like they hide from each other and they pop out at each other. They scare each other. I was making dinner, and I remember facing the living room area because I was watching TV. My daughter was sitting in the living room. I saw a little figure like standing right in the corner, like in the dining room area, but I thought my son's gonna try and scare me, so I'm gonna just play along. So I just kept doing like what I'm doing or whatever. I turned around to the sink, washed my hands, turned back, and he was gone. I was like, okay, he just left. I go to the living room to ask my daughter if her brother was just here. She's like, no, I didn't see him. She would have seen him because of the way that the house is. If he's coming down the hallway, he's going to pass that living room area. So she's going to see him. The person, my son that I thought was standing there, was wearing a white shirt. I remember seeing that white shirt. And I go to his room to tell him you couldn't scare me or taunt him or whatever. And he's like deep in a game with his headphones on and he's wearing a red shirt. So I'm like, oh. So I just stand there for a little bit and he's looking at me and he takes his headphones off, like thinking dinner was ready or something. He's like, is dinner ready? And I was like, no, I just came to tell you that a little bit longer. And he's like, oh, okay. And he just puts his headphone back on and just goes to whatever he's doing. And I come back around and I guess I have a look in my face because my daughter's, what happened? And I'm like, nothing, dinner's gonna be ready. And she's like, okay. And that's it. And so in my head, I'm like, what happened though? What just happened? So I look over there when I'm passing it and there's nothing there. I turn on the light. There's nothing in that room. So I'm like, okay. I check the door to make sure the front door's closed. Like nobody came in. So I was freaked out. I'm still getting chills right now. So then, like, the following, I don't know, it was maybe like a month later or something. The kids were away again. They went to their dad's house. And I went outside to like the little backyard patio area. And my sister has a pool and everything. So I was just like sitting there wondering what I'm gonna make to eat. I don't know, scrolling through my phone. There's the way that the walls are in the kitchen / little breakfast area is like all just windows. There's one little section where like one window breaks and the other one starts, but most of that wall is just a window. So I was sitting with my back towards the windows because I could see the TV a little bit, and I saw somebody through like my far like peripheral walk past one window and then it breaks, and I didn't see them come back through the other window, and that's impossible the way that's set up. So I get up really quick and I remember I saw the same thing, like the side, just like somebody's like arm, but they were wearing a white shirt. And it just clicked. It went back to that time that somebody was like standing right there. And I was like, that's exactly what it was. It was the same white shirt. It was short sleeved. And I thought, and it was more like a male figure because it just looked more manly than girly, if that makes sense. But he never made it past the other window. So my first reaction was the kids forgot something, so they came back to get it. So I go back inside and the front door is locked, like the gate's locked, and there's nobody home. I'm by myself. So I call my friend again, and she luckily was also like not doing anything. So she comes over this time because she's like, okay, this is the second time you told me about something. It would be cool to like actually be there. And I was like, I don't know if it's cool, but I don't want to be alone. So she does. So she comes over. We're just like watching movies and like we ordered food. So the food got there. But I always made sure that I would lock like the front gate to the house just because sometimes I do forget to lock the door. So I always make sure that front gate is locked. So after we got the food delivered, they left. I locked the gate, came back inside, and I remember locking that door. Because I remember like almost hurting myself trying to lock it. We're just sitting there where everything's off because I like to watch everything dark with just like candles going. I don't know. So everything was off. And we were like halfway through a movie and we had a little bit of the back door cracked because it was during like the winter time. So like the first 3 candles that were laid out in front of the TV just blew off. But it's weird because it was only the first 3, even though there was like a whole bunch of them. I was like, oh, like the wind. So I get up, close the door, light those candles back on. And we just continue watching TV, and then the same 3 candles just blew off again. So my friend looks at me and she was like, what are you doing? She really thought that I could do that for some reason. And I was like, what are we doing? Let's just go somewhere. Let's leave. And she was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. She's like, just turn them all off. So I'm like, okay, turn them all off. And I turn one light on, the hallway light. I don't know, we get distracted or something. We go to the kitchen and we come back and those first 3 lights, candle lights, are on. So I look at her and I'm like, her name was Alicia. And I'm like, Alicia, let's go. I don't want to be here. She really saw it in my face that I was actually scared. And she's like, okay, let's go. So we ended up going back to her house instead. And I remember just staying up, just talking about it. And there's just no way. There's no possibility. You close the door. We were just going, analyzing the whole thing. And then I started telling her about the rest of the things. And she was like, what are you going to do? What should we do? We started saging the house the next day. So I was like, that's the only thing I know, like off the top of my head. So we were doing that, but the sages never turned on for some reason. It was my first time doing it, and it was her first time doing it. So we just thought we just didn't know how to light them, or if there was like a special way or something. So it didn't work. So she was like, let's try like incense instead. I was like, I don't think that's the same thing, but okay. So we did that thinking it would do something. Of course, it didn't do anything. Then I really started getting into like sage and like energy and things like that. And I remember I had a bunch of like books and articles that I was like reading and wanting to read. And I started really getting into it. But then my sister thought that it was doing the opposite. She's like, if you're going to acknowledge that they're here, then they are going to come and you're just making it worse. I was like, okay. So I stopped. So like maybe there's some truth to that. So I was like, okay, I'll stop. About 2 months after that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm going to make sure that I could do this on my own or something like that. I don't know what I told her to make her feel better. And we still go. She still lives there, and she's had roommates after us, and they all say things, but not too much because she gets mad. So we just all share like an untold story. I do think that something was maybe in there. I never felt like it was anything negative. I never felt like it was anything that wanted to harm us or anything. I just think that it was something that wanted us to know that it was also there. And after that, I feel like I'm very spiritual now. I feel like it's not a bad thing to be in tune. So if they wanted us to know that they were there or to make it known, their presence known, I get it, but I never felt like it was anything bad. So hopefully it was just somebody that we were just coexisting with. My friend freaked out after the whole candle thing. Oh my gosh, she was so like, okay, like I thought you were making this up, because she likes scary stuff like that. And she thought I was just like making it up because she likes it. And I'm like, girl, no, trust me, I don't want this to happen to me or to anybody. But I was always the one that was like, that would tell her like, no, you're crazy, like that, it can't be. And then of course this happens to me. But she thought it was cool. And she did mention actually that she did hear like the faucet to the sink turn on one time, but she really thought it was me. And then I ended up coming out of like the other side of the house, like the bathroom or something. So she was like, oh, okay, never mind. And she never told me anything until after, when we left that day. She was like, yeah, the other day. I was like, what? I could see it. The figure wasn't see-through. It wasn't like smoky or like silky or nothing. It was a person. It was like a real thing. I couldn't see through it. It was there. But I never saw the face. I always only saw like from the neck, like the chin down, and I could see that he was wearing a white shirt. And then like the arms, when he passed by the window, I saw his arm and he was wearing a white shirt. And I tried to Google it. I tried to look up my sister's address and see the history on the house and stuff. I did see that her house was built in the early 70s. I was able to pull that up. But as far as like owner information or owner history. I wasn't able to find that. My sister, she really doesn't want to believe it because it's her house, and she's there by herself, so she really doesn't want to hear those stories. But I don't know how she's not hearing it or seeing it, or everybody else has. The other roommates that she had before me, my cousin was living there for a little bit. She would tell me the whole thing. She had my room, which is interesting, and she saw the steps under the door. I don't think the kids ever saw it because I think they did mention that they thought it was me one time, but they didn't see the figure, not that I know of, unless they were too scared to tell me. And I wouldn't want to bring it up because I don't want them to be scared, so I just kept it to myself.
Hey, see you in the next story.